Welcome, everyone, to the first edition of the Fasig-Tipton Focus Podcast. Jesse Ullery here, and we are joined by Ned Toffey of Spendthrift Farm. We're going to recap the July sale that we just had, and we are going to look forward to our Saratoga Sale, the 102nd Saratoga Sale. Looking forward to that coming up in just a few weeks. Ned, thanks for joining us this morning, fresh off the heels of a busy weekend for us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a great weekend, and I'm honored to be the inaugural guest here on your podcast. So
you should be. You should be. This is history making stuff here. So let's quickly recap the July sale. You guys topped the sale this year with a first crop sire. You've had had some success over the years with the July sale, which we'll get into in a little bit. But this year, you topped the sale with an authentic filly, his first crop of yearlings this year. What have you seen by him? Did you expect your own horse, not just by your sire, but a horse that you bred to top the sale this year?
You know, I honestly would say I would have been surprised if you told me she was going to top the sale. She was a very nice filly. We came in with the intention of trying to make an impression with buyers and breeders with a really nice, authentic first crop, get them started the right way, first sale of the year, kick things off right. It was absolutely the intention. I would say the results very much exceeded our expectations. So, but she was a filly who has always been a nice filly. But, you know, there's a lot of subtleties with these yearlings, and everything just came together over the last 6 to 8 weeks with her. And she just blossomed and came out here looking really athletic, really balanced, and just a classy filly. And she made an impression, and I think she stood out. And you know, we got a little lucky and got the right people on her. And she was, I say, she was nice enough for people to fight over. And that's kind of what we had going on. It's
interesting. You had mentioned, I saw your comments post sale yesterday about, in these last 6 weeks heading up to the July sale, and really any sale, when you start to prep on the yearlings, they can kind of go one way or the other on you. She's a horse that you said that had blossomed and came the right way. How much pressure is there, do you feel, with your stallions, and not only horses you breed, but especially with your stallions? Is there a lot of pressure to get them started on the right foot with the sales?
There is, and at the same time, there isn't, because we do not try to manipulate the market in any way. What you saw yesterday is about as much as we're going to do to try to manipulate it. So if we've got, you know, yearlings by a first crop sire that we're offering, yeah, we're going to try to put them in the right places so that they can, you know, perform the best. And placement is so important. There's, you know, probably 4 or 5 options that we all have for yearling sales throughout the year, and putting any horse in the right spot is so important. So we're going to do that, but we stay away from too much beyond that. Just put them in the right place and let the stallion speak for himself. You know, people in this industry are pretty savvy, and there's not too much fooling them. So you just, you know, you got to hope that the stallion does his job, gets the kind of offspring that are going to appeal to both commercially to the pin hookers and to the end users. And if you'll do that, you can't go too far wrong.
You have a great team in place at Spendthrift. When did the process start identifying this filly to bring to July? How did that progression look with you and your team? When did you start looking at these horses as potential candidates to sell for this sale as opposed to waiting a little bit? How does that process work with you guys?
Yeah, I think formally the process starts, you know, I would say for us probably February, March. But informally, I think really from day one, we're always evaluating these foals, scrutinizing them with a blacksmith, you know, just organizing our thoughts. So you always have these thoughts in mind really from day one as you're looking at these foals, and they grow up on the farm, and you begin to, you can't help but have those thoughts into your mind. Well, this would be a great Saratoga horse. This is a horse who's going to need time. We need to push him back as late as we can. So you've always got those thoughts. But our yearling manager, Martin Martinez, does a great job. He's been with us for years. Was the assistant with us under 2 different yearling managers, and we were really happy a couple of years to be able to promote him to yearling manager, and he does an incredible job. And I rely very heavily on him, and so we sit down and we really begin to talk about what horses are going to fit where, and it's physical. It's how mature are they. It's what do the vet reports look like?
Sure.
Every sale has a different makeup of what you can and can't put in there. We think of July as being kind of a pinhooker heavy sale, although ironically we sold this filly to an end user. But you really want something quick looking, something precocious, and commercial looking to bring to July here. I think this filly was all of those things, but she still, as Authentic does, has sort of a classic look about her as well. But back to the original question, we start to formulate a list that we're going to show all the sales companies of our yearlings and what we think makes sense for all the different sales. With you guys, with Fasig-Tipton, the questions: do we want to go July, Saratoga, or October? With Keeneland, it's about book placement. Where in the sale do you want to be? And all of these are, they're hugely important. Placement is a big deal. And although, again, ironically, I think this filly probably could have sold anywhere. We could have sold her on the street corner, and she'd have done really well.
She was a very classy horse.
She was,
yeah.
And I think there's no hiding, and only so much you can do to accentuate her. She's just plain really nice.
Yeah, you had mentioned that you guys have used these July sales as you want some precocious type looking horses. You've done very well with July the past few years. You topped the sale this year not only with an Authentic but a homebred Authentic. Last year you had the highest price first crop sire with an Omaha Beach filly that brought $410,000, and then Into Mischief, although it was a horse you didn't breed, topped the sale in 2021. What do you think it is about July that really showcases the Spendthrift stallions in that regard?
Well, I like to think that we've all been doing this long enough that we're starting to figure out what's the best place to put all these horses. And in our case, we've got about anywhere from 85 to 95 broodmares in a given year. And one of the things that's really important for us is to try to spread these yearlings out, because we may have 8 or 10 by Authentic and 5 or 6 by Into Mischief, and you don't want to put them all in one spot. And at the same time, July is the start of the sales season, and so it is important to get off to the right start. And so we will often look at a horse that try to find a horse that maybe is borderline Saratoga type, that we would just move up, bring here. That'll open up a spot for another horse in Saratoga or September. But something that's going to make an impression. And it's just something that through trial and error over time we've sort of figured out, and we've been able to hit it on the head the last couple of years.
And you're off to a great start this year with your freshman sires. The horses that have first crop 2-year-olds of this year. You've got the leading sire so far with Matoli. You've got Vino Rosso as well, who's having a very good year. Did you anticipate the starts with those two horses getting off to as good a start as they have?
Well, I'd love to tell you that we knew it all along, but I'd be lying. Certainly we expected them to. We were very fortunate several years ago to land just sort of a bumper crop of stallions. We brought in, as you mentioned, Vino Rosso, Omaha Beach, and Matoli, who we sort of thought of as our big three, but we also brought in Maximus Mischief.
Yeah, you have 4 of the top 5 as we speak right now.
Who's right there returning, performing with those guys. A totally different price point, but he's getting it done, and he doesn't know what a stud fee is. So, and I'm pretty sure his offspring don't either. So they're really doing a great job. And even Colt Front, I think, is number 6 on the list. So we were able to bring in those 5 horses, and that was really exciting. We were able to buy them during their racing careers, and we were fortunate that most of them finished up really strongly and came in to the marketplace with momentum off the track and got really good books, were well supported. We've heard great things about really all of those, the offspring by all of those stallions. And so we came into the sales season really optimistic about what we were going to see. But you never know, are they going to run like they look? And But so far they've gotten off to a great start on the track. Couldn't be happier with that. And so you hope, but you just never know. We've seen, I think if you've been doing this long enough, you see so many horses that look the part that don't perform, and others, there's some wonderful horses that have topped the sire list in recent years that nobody was talking about them in their first couple of years commercially. So again, as our founder, the late Wayne Hughes, used to love to say, nobody knows. And we all like to think we know.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we don't. So we came in, we were optimistic, but so far really happy with halfway through the year how they're doing.
And you guys have had some bumper crops, as you say, with bringing in stallions. You've had, as we mentioned, you've got 4 out of the top 5 there. You've also got Colt Front in there as well. You had, is it 5 stallions that came with the class of 2023 with the weanlings, with Yaupon, Known Agenda, Basin, By My Standards, Rock Your World. So you had a big group there.
Yeah.
You had Jackie's Warrior that retired last year, Cyberknife, Mo Donegal, Greatest Honor, those horses coming in. Do you think Spendthrift continues on that trajectory with bringing in those big groups of horses like that? You guys are known as the Breeders' Farm.
Yeah.
And obviously the results are now translating with the freshman sire list. You're seeing the results in the sales ring as well. Do you see yourself continuing on that trajectory?
Yeah, I think we recognize that at its core, it is a numbers game. And going back to the statement that nobody knows, I mean, all you can really do with these horses is if you can anticipate that you think that as a farm you can get a good book of mares to these horses, that's a horse worth taking a shot on. If we think that they will be accepted by the breeding public, because we have no way of knowing whether they'll be successful or not. I recently saw an old catalog page of Sunday Silence, and it was as white as you can imagine. I mean, there's hardly a black type horse on that entire page. You wouldn't in a million years look at that pedigree and think, here is one of the most influential international sires in the modern world.
Change the world.
Let alone something you'd want to pay to go try to win a claiming race somewhere. I mean, it's just, it's remarkable to look at. And you go back and you look at our horse Into Mischief. We bought him for $180,000 out of a 2-year-old in training sale. A lot of our incentive programs were based on how we're trying to figure out a way to get people to breed to him. And yet now he's now you can start to put him in a category with horses like Bold Ruler. He's on his way with a little luck. He's going to be 5 years in a row leading General Sire, which hasn't been done since Bold Ruler. So we're talking about since the 1960s. And this is a horse that we were begging people not that long ago, begging people to breed to him. So, I think it's important. What we want to do is we want to obviously offer the best quality horses we can, but we also want to offer horses to our breeders at a variety of levels. And that was something that was really important to Mr. Hughes, and I think continues to be important to us, that this is not just about the elite and the blue bloods, but trying to make this work for everybody, for small breeders, because they, as Mr. Hughes used to like to say, they're the backbone of the industry, and they represent a fairly significant part of the market. And so we want to try to make things work for them. So we're going to continue to try to bring in quality, but we're also going to try to bring in horses that appeal at a variety of levels in the market. And that's kind of what those numbers represent.
And you mentioned you have anywhere between 85 to 100 broodmares, let's say. Mm-hmm. You guys obviously race as well. Mm-hmm. What do you factor into the process? I know you had mentioned vet work that goes into the sales process. What is the process like with knowing which ones you're going to keep to race, if that is something you do, or do you try to offer a majority of your horses? How does that process work?
We very much try to offer a majority of our horses, and that's through the transition from Mr. Hughes to his son-in-law Eric Gustafson and the daughter Tamara. That's been one of the things that we've wrestled with. How would we continue to do what we did under Mr. Hughes, which was offer the vast majority of our crop at auction? And really the main ones that in the past that didn't go through were the ones that with some vet issues. and we did really well racing a number of those. So, but we've talked about what we would keep, what we would sell, and we've kind of made after really wrestling with this for a while, we've kind of arrived at the conclusion that it's probably best to take the vast majority of our crop to market and make them available to buyers. I think it hurts you a little bit too if you're holding back the best ones for yourself. People start to look at what you do take out there with a little bit of a poisoned eye, and so we're going to take again the vast majority of the crop will be out there at public auction, and we'll give people the opportunity to buy them. We're not going to give these horses away, but we're also not going to be unreasonable. For example, yesterday, I think the reserve on the filly that we sold was $225,000. They sell at $225,000. She brought $475,000. So, filly we wanted to get paid for, but we weren't going to be overly ambitious with our reserves.
But as you mentioned, it was a horse that people were going to fight over, and they carried her up to the number.
Yeah, and that's the way you feel going in, but you never quite know.
Sure, yeah. So segueing into the Saratoga, you guys have a nice catalog of horses that we will talk about here in just a few moments, but you've also had some success buying Saratoga graduates, the two top runners that Spendthrift has this year. Kingsbarns, a Saratoga graduate, but then you purchased out of the 2-year-old in training sale from Miami from Fasig-Tipton, and the Major Dude, two-time graded stakes winner this year. You guys bought at Saratoga. Let's start with Kingsbarns. Do you remember him from Saratoga before you purchased at Gulfstream?
I actually had to go back and look at my notes, and we had him down as a solid individual, and I honestly don't remember why it was that we ended up getting off of him, but we certainly cost ourselves some money in doing so. But we're still able to wind up with a very, very nice horse, and happy to have him, and he's been a lot of fun to campaign, and just a talented athletic horse. And mostly what we're looking for our colts is something that has the potential to wind up in our stud barn, and he certainly has that potential.
And then with Major Dude, you guys purchased him at Saratoga. A great way to support a stallion that you stand as well in Bolt d'Oro.
Yeah.
What was the process? How did you narrow in on him to identify him as a racing prospect?
I think we go into any sale. Our primary goal is to find athletes that can perform on the racetrack. The colts, we want them to be able to make a case for them to stand at stud eventually if they perform well enough, or the fillies to be something that we'd want to have in our broodmare band in the long run. I think in his case, we did have it in mind that we wanted to try to support Bolt d'Oro as a first-year sire. And we keep that in mind with all of our first-year horses. If there's something that we feel good about, they're probably going to get a preference over something by another sire. And so it was not hard to find options to support Bolt d'Oro up at Saratoga. There were some very, very nice horses. And we were really happy to come away with our first pick. We didn't have to pay the most money, but we came away with our first pick, and he's a very nice horse. Todd's told me many times, Todd Pletcher that trains him, he's a very easy horse to train. He comes out of the barn, out of the stall sound every morning. He's willing. He likes to go to the track and do his job, and has been a really consistent horse for us. So.
And this year you have 8 yearlings up at Saratoga, and I would say probably the highlight amongst the draft, or certainly just from a pedigree perspective. We'll be curious to see how the horse looks up at Saratoga. But you have 8 yearlings, and you have the 5th foal out of Beholder, who's coming up to the sale, horse by Curlin. Can you talk a little bit about the decision-making process? You've had some success this year with Tina Ella being a graded stakes winner out of her now. Mm-hmm. And how did that come to be that you guys were going to offer her at public auction? Offer him at public auction, excuse me.
Well, and first of all, I would say this is I think the 8 that we're taking represents the largest number that we've ever taken to Saratoga. And I think that speaks well of our stallions and our crop, because I tend to think that it's really important what kind of physical you take to Saratoga. And Saratoga is a wonderful place to sell a horse. And if you take the wrong horse, it's a long ride home. So we had the fact that we had 8 horses that we felt fit into that physically, that criteria to go and could stand up to the scrutiny of the best buyers in the world. We're very happy about that. As far as Beholder, this again represents the decision we made to bring, almost every horse that in our crop to auction, and this is a very nice colt. We think he will stand up to that scrutiny as well. And we felt like it was very important. Really, the bottom line, I think, is to continue to do what we've been doing, which is to treat this like a business. As you said, Beholder, after a little bit of a slow start, seems to be getting things sorted out as a broodmare. T-Nail is a really, really nice filly with Richard Mandela. The 2-year-old by Bolt Doro is not yet named, but Raul Reyes, who broke her, both he and Richard Mandela, who now has her at the track, their impression has been that this is the most talented of her offspring yet. So she seems to be on an upward trajectory there. This colt is probably the strongest physical that she's thrown so far. As a son of Curlin, I don't think there's too many of the top buyers in the world that wouldn't be interested in a colt like this. So we're really excited to be able to offer a horse like this. We think that taking advantage of that sort of magical environment at Saratoga is the place to, that's a perfect spot for him, and really looking forward to it.
And you also have nice representation by some sires as well. You have an authentic that's headed up there. You have a colt and a filly, each by Vacoma, who has his first crop yearlings this year that are very well received. You have Omaha Beach from his second crop, a couple of fillies, one out of Tammy G and a colt, and then another second crop horse with Vino Rosso. Talk about the decision-making process there, obviously with Authentic and Vacoma wanting to showcase horses there with the first crop, and then having Omaha Beach with a good amount of runners out there and showing some promise to bring those horses up there.
Yeah, you worry a little bit about taking second crop sires that may still be sitting on that bubble a little bit, taking those to a place like Saratoga. There's a little bit of risk because obviously a lot can happen between the time you make that decision and the time the sale actually happens. You need things to go pretty well. But, Omaha Beach has certainly gotten off to the right start. And every year, both when it's time to sell seasons and when his offspring go to the market to sell, he's been so well received that we felt like this was a pretty safe play. And now that they've gotten off to the right start at the track, we feel like we're on pretty firm ground with those. But they're the right type of, first and foremost, they're the right type of physicals. Again, sort of same thing with the Vino Rosso. I think we're really tickled that we've got a couple of Vacomas that stand up. He's a little bit lower price point than an Authentic. But to have two yearlings that stand up, we think will stand up to that scrutiny at Saratoga, I think that's a real feather in his cap that he's been able to throw that kind of individual.
Hello.
Yes, this is the Fasig-Tipton In Focus podcast. May I ask who's calling?
This is Billy from Mississippi.
Billy from Mississippi. What question do you have for our guest, Ned Toffey, today?
Well, I just want to say I've been a big fan of Spendthrift Farm and Ned Toffey, so this is a great honor to speak to him today. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm just fine, Paul.
Damn it.
Paul Manganero joining us today on our inaugural podcast. So, Paul, thanks for calling. This is a little bit of a new feature as well, so we are actually surprised that this technology works. Paul and Ned have been longtime fans. Paul, a great racehorse owner, a supporter of Fasig-Tipton as well. So thanks for calling in, Paul. And where are you today?
I'm right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, at my office in Woburn.
And your relationship with Ned goes back quite a few years. I think it predates the horse racing industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, it sure does. It goes back to our time as roommates and teammates at the University of Massachusetts back in the early 80s. And at that time, he was under 200 pounds. So that was a long time ago. No, it was a pleasure being Ned's roommate and teammate. And then, before our senior year at UMass, we didn't have girlfriends or any friends, so we decided to go and spend the summer in Lexington. And this is a good story. At that time, there was great stallions like Nerriere, Blushing Groom, Alleged, Halo around. And we said, we got to learn. We're going to buy a notebook. So we bought a notebook and we'd go around and take notes on these stallions. And the best comment I can remember was big brown horse. That's how sophisticated we were back then. But he's come a long way.
Well, I would say you both have. So what has been a good experience that you guys, I'm hoping they exist, a good experience you guys have had together at the racetrack or in the industry that you can share with us?
Well, we're in two different, we're in the same business, but in two different capacities. He's general manager of one of the biggest farms in the country, and I'm a small breeding operation that invests in racing and breeding and stallion shears. So, I share his successes because he's my friend, and I hope he does the same, even though we don't have as many successes as Spendthrift and Ned Toffey. But I can go around and say, bye. I knew Ned Toffey when he was nobody. Now he's my friend.
Ned, do you have any rebuttals?
No, I will tell you, Paul and his dad, who's no longer with us, there's such a huge. I'm so appreciative of everything they've done for me over the years because I came down here to Kentucky. I was working on a farm. Matter of fact, the Seitz family farm. Anna Seitz was I think about 8 years old at the time. But every time the Manganeros would come into town, they'd invite me out to dinner with them, and they'd talk about they were selling horses with Eaton Williams back then, and so they would relay their discussions that they'd had with John Williams and Lee Eaton, two guys that are just titans of the industry, and I would get to hear all of this discussions kind of recounted and discussed and mulled over. And it was a huge learning experience. And Mr. Manganaro was always so great about including me in those things. So it just knowing Paul and knowing his dad and his whole family has just been it's just been a huge leg up for me over the years. And class people and great experience.
Just the best things, like they'd said, the best times where we'd take him out to dinner when he was first down there. My father would ask questions. So, Ned, what do you think about the sale? The answer was, I don't know. Ned, what's down? I don't know. Ned, who do you think won the Kentucky Derby? I don't know. So after 10 questions and with the answers of I don't know, my father would say, Ned, why don't you tell us something you do know?
Well, in my defense, Mr. Manganaro was a remarkable guy, and this was a guy who, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 2 years of college and then came back and headed up the family business and has taken it to, it's a massively successful, largest drywall contractor in New England, hugely successful, and this was an incredibly street savvy man. And what I figured out very quickly was if you do not try to BS this guy because he could smell it coming a mile away. And so I just decided if I don't know the answer to something, I'm not going to make it up. I'm just going to say I don't know. Well,
a good life lesson.
He was, I'm cleaning stalls at Brookdale Farm, and he's asking me things about, real estate values. and I'm just, I don't know. And he just kept, But I am gonna tell this one on Paul though about but the first time I ever had dinner at Paul's house, sit down with his whole family, Paul and his mom and his dad and brother and two sisters, and we get about halfway through dinner and Mr. Manganaro looks at me and he says, Ned, do you know anything about horses? And I said, well, a little bit. And he says, I feel like Secretariat. And I said, oh, well, how is that, Mr. Manganaro? He says, I was great in my day, but I haven't been able to reproduce myself.
My response was, can I have another tray of raviolis, please?
That's great. That's great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for calling in. We're going to let you go. We'll finish up here with Ned, but thanks for calling into the podcast. We appreciate it.
You guys enjoy. Bye.
See ya. That was a nice little test of that. So thanks for playing along with us.
No problem.
So just to recap Saratoga, you had mentioned this is the biggest draft that you have coming up there this year, but you talked about the magic of Saratoga as well. What, in your opinion, is the magic of Saratoga? Can you elaborate on that a little bit and what makes it such a special place and a special sale?
I think it's a lot of things. There's such a wonderful history. I think the great writer Joe Palmer said Saratoga has its ghost, its own brand of ghosts, and you just walk around there and you feel that history. And it's a night sale. That all of particularly the first night, a lot of the townspeople come out. There's a huge crowd. There's an electricity in the air that's palpable, and I think it's probably hard for some buyers not to get caught up in it a little bit. And so it's just a great environment, and I think we all look forward to it all year long, and. So it really is a special place.
Yeah. I know the electricity you're speaking of. The first time I went to work there and announced a sale, I felt like coming down through the tunnel where the horses come down through and then into the auction stand. It was almost like going into an arena or a coliseum a little bit. You have bidders all around you. The noise that is down there that you're in the center of with the horses who, I mean, they're the horses that handle themselves up there and show themselves are class individuals for being up there. It is such an exciting environment, and you can feel that energy, like you just said.
You absolutely can.
And it just makes for two incredibly amazing nights. And we're so thankful that Spendthrift is going to be a part of it again this year, and we look forward to the great draft of horses you're bringing up there, and all the success you've had this year, and hopefully we continue on through the rest of the sale season.
Well, thank you, and we're looking forward to it, and it's always exciting. I can't wait to get up to Saratoga, and hopefully we'll sell some horses and buy some horses and have a good time.
Great. Well, Ned, thanks for joining us on the first edition, the inaugural edition of the Fasig-Tipton Focus podcast. We want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next edition.